Well, if you've been following the Olympics, especially Team India at these Olympics like we have, I'm sure you've been on an emotional roller coaster. I certainly have been on an emotional roller coaster with so many ups and downs. It's just one day of things that we are very excited about. The next day is like heartbreak after heartbreak. So yeah, it's been that kind of an Olympics so far, 10 days into the games for Team India as well as, of course, everyone else. But yeah, I think we should get cracking with this. Welcome back to the second episode of our India special. It's the Olympics right now, but we can talk about a lot more going forward as well. It's an Indian sports special podcast. If you haven't seen our debut episode, you should definitely check that out, where we got such great insights from none other than Monty Panesar himself. Monty, how have you been?
Oh, well, I've been good. I've been very pleased with the progress of the GB team. They're well ahead of schedule. They're doing really well. A lot of medals every day. I wish I could say the same about your team, India. They seem to be fourth place. Seems to be their most common position at the moment. They haven't done so well, but you've had one in particular. Maybe you should mention it. Who's done well for India?
Monty, I'm glad you brought that up, Monty, because I feel the first week of Indian Olympics was dominated by one name, and that's Manu Bhaker, the first Indian to win multiple Olympic medals since independence, and she's only 22 years old. How special is she, Monty?
Yeah, very special. Look, the story about her, right, is with her coach, Jaspal Rana, where she kind of departed from him. They went separate ways after the Tokyo Olympics because he wouldn't let her compete in the three events that she did this time round. And she nearly won the third medal at the 25-meter pistol, where she, I think came fourth. So this story is a remarkable story where it shows the relationship of a coach and an athlete reunited, where even Jaspal Rana said, if I was myself, I would not give myself a call. So if he was in the same position as his athlete, he wouldn't have recommended that reunite. So again, it kind of shows that to be so successful, there's no place for ego. Your ego's going to be put aside, and she's reaped the rewards. He's been the most successful athlete. Is going to now, to be the flag bearer for the closing ceremony. And probably the most successful story that came out of India, with all the other sort of mere disappointments.
Monty, I had a quick question about you. I'm glad you brought up the coach, Monty, because again, you've been playing at the highest level. How much can a coach impact you? So there's one thing that he can help you improve the technical side, but how much can he impact your mental side of the game as well?
Yeah, look, we often talk about, graphs about competency and trust, when it comes to a coach and an athlete relationship. If you have high level of trust but low skill, the coach will work with the athlete because he knows, okay, there's not much, he or she, a lot of work to do, but it's a high level of trust. But when there's a highly skilled athlete, but then the trust isn't there so much, when you start failing, you start losing, suddenly the blame culture starts taking place, and that's where the relationship goes off the boil, and that's kind of stuff that happened. The trust kind of fell off the cliff really at Tokyo. Just before the Tokyo, she was saying that, oh, Jaspal Rana is actually doing favoritism with the other athletes and not really letting me to compete in the three events, but this time around they are doing it. And I think that's been probably one of the most positive stories about reuniting, an athlete to drop their ego to reunite with a trusted coach. It takes a lot to do that because all athletes have huge egos, but it's a place where you just think, right, you have to put that aside because it very much does test you. You are going to be the world's best, competing against the world's best. You're the best of your country. You're going to get massive plaudits. You're going to be, she's going to be, her life is changed now. She's going to be massive in India. She's going to be the face of women's sport wherever she goes. But let's hope, that relationship continues, the coach and the athlete, once this Olympics is over.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that she's going to be in demand back in India. I read the other day that she's already had like a bunch of sponsorship approaches just right at the bat of that second bronze medal that she won, and it's only going to go up from here. But I'm really glad you mentioned the Jaspal Rana part as well, Monty, because you said that there's no place for ego when you're trying to compete at the highest level. I mean, everyone has ego, but it was big of her to keep it aside. That I think is even more impressive given she's 22 years old. I mean, she's 22, and it's not just that, it's just the calmness with which she approaches everything. There was no over-the-top celebrations after she won both the medals. And this is after, I mean, just 2 weeks prior to this day that we're talking about her, there was all that the narrative around Manu Bhaker was she missed out in Tokyo. She succumbed to the pressure in Tokyo. 2 weeks later, she's just today announced that she's going to be the flag bearer of India at the closing ceremony in a week's time from now. So it's just things have changed so much for her, but she's still so calm in victory or in defeat. I mean, have you seen a more composed, I should say, 22-year-old, someone so young before?
Well, the thing is, her interesting story is that both Coach Jaspal Rana and Manu, they actually very closely follow the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yeah.
Where they say, do your duty, do your best, rest will follow. So her mantra was very much about process, get the equipment ready, get my process in line, get my aiming absolutely spot on. I will trust my process, rest will follow. And then on the corner of eye, he's got a coach there looking at her. And that's motivation. That's like the biggest stage, the biggest moment. You need that inspiration, you need that uplift. And what you do, you look at your coach, she's looking at Jaspal Rana, and that's giving her the motivation. It's just the focus, the coach, and then the mantra, the following of it. So this is a really good story to actually sometimes, when you're young, you want huge success, you want things quickly. Here she went, no, it's not about the success. My mantra is the process. I trust my process. I know I'll get the success, which often you would associate that with maybe American athletes, GB athletes, because they tend to have that kind of language where it's beginning to now, I think, set in. I think MS Dhoni used to talk about it a lot, focus on the process. And I think it's good to see, that the Indian athletes, rather than chasing the success because they want to be successful so quickly, no, my success will come if I trust the process.
That's especially incredible when you consider the fact that she's just 22, right, Monty? Do you remember how you were, what you were like, what you were doing when you were 22?
Well, it's interesting you say that. At 23, when I made my debut, I had a coach with me as well. I had a live coach, and we worked together where I wouldn't talk, game plans, whatever's on my mind, emotionally, mentally. I would talk to my mentor, not the coach in the England team, because then I could let my hair down in a safe space. But when I'm in the England team, I'm fully firing on all cylinders. And that was probably the biggest standout for me, was that just Monty looks mentally prepared. He just looks mentally ready to play Test cricket. And that was because of, having a life coach beside me. So when I looked into her story, it gave me my similar memories of when I, made my debut. And then I had a few good years with England. It was obviously, when you have a close coach with you and you have a trusted relationship, you end up, tolerating a lot for the athlete, but also the coach himself will invest more time in developing the passion, in developing that, high level of maybe skill or areas that needs work upon. The coach will give that extra time.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, like you rightly mentioned, even with Manu, with Jaspal and Manu's relationship has very much been like Krishna and Arjun from the Bhagavad Gita. And some really good insights from Monty Panesar, as we always expect. And, Manu Bhaker, like you said, Monty, very rightly, that she's going to be a superstar now. She's become one in the last 10-ish days, and now that superstar level is just going to grow, like we've seen with Neeraj Chopra since Tokyo, right? But that brings me to some of the other superstars who were already in the squad, like PV Sindhu, who was already a two-time medalist. Manu has now equaled her, but PV Sindhu was going for a third medal in her Olympic career that would have made her outright the most decorated athlete in India's Olympic history. Lavlina Borgohain in boxing could not really add to her Tokyo medal. And then in badminton, Satvik Sairaj and Chirag Shetty could not win, even though, they were the third seeds and such favorites for the gold medal, not just a bronze or a silver. Um, how deflating is something like that? Or is it really deflating for the rest of the campaign when they see that, oh, our superstars, some of our biggest medal hopes are not really winning? Because those were big upsets.
Yeah, they're massive upsets. I think PV, was actually the most brightest hope. Really, everyone's hoping her, to do really well. But she's had 2 years of injury, hit and miss. She did really well in the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. Got a gold medal there, so it was a hope that you think, well, at least get a bronze, as a minimum. But there was no medal, for her this time round, and I think she also posted picture of her fellow teammate, well, a fellow let's say opposite, partner, in Caroline Marine, who suffered a knee injury, against, the Chinese opponent that she lost to, which was He Bingjoy. And yeah, so when you look at it, she even said openly, admittedly, that this is the hardest loss of my career. And she'll take time to recover, but she goes, I will be ready for the next Olympics, which is interesting because she'll be 33 then. How good will she be? Has she gone past her best? So yeah, that's what it is.
So, Monty, so like this is the first Olympics since I think 2008 where India hasn't got a badminton medal. And there have been a few upsets, right? And I want to talk about the few close shaves that we had. So, Lavlina was one win away from a medal. Today, Lakshya Sen was a win away from a medal. Coming in fourth position in the Olympics is probably the worst position to come at. How deflating would this be mentally and going forward, especially considering the fact that Lakshya is just 22 years old? How much do you think this loss would affect him? And how do you think he should come back? How do you think he's going to bounce back?
Yeah, look, I think for him, it is heartbreaking. When you're in your first Olympics and you're doing really well, you want to, be the champion. You want to come back home and everyone's celebrating your name, and that's what you want. You want that call, don't you, from the Prime Minister? And unfortunately, it didn't happen for him, and he couldn't really get his words out. It was really painful. It was heartbreaking for him. And it's one of them sort of things where he was tired. He lost. He obviously had a bit of an injury. He was bleeding as well. He got fatigued, and he started off well in the first set. 21-13, did really well. Then I lost the second one at 21-16. But then that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the great players, they know how to shift momentum, and Lee ZJ was far better, on the given day. And then suddenly the momentum shifted. And that last set, 21-11, he completely, blew him away. So again, once the pain of loss deteriorates, I'm sure he'll sit down, reassess things, where he went wrong, what he could do better. And just look at the success story of Manu, with her relationship with her coach. That, I think, is the template now for the Indian athletes to think, right, can we now find a trusted coach that we can work with to help and develop us and stretch us and push us, but also to see if there's competent coaches in India. If not, overseas coaches is another option as well. So these athletes got to be a bit more, I'm sure they'll be a bit more detailed, precise, how they want to do it. And then you look at investment, I think, there was over the 117 athletes. So the whole, investment was about 500 crores, which is about 50 million US, right?
Yeah, probably something around that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you look at the GB athletes, they were about 327 athletes, and their funding was just over 325 million. So when you look at it, how much does it cost? What's the cost to get a medal, I'll say 1 million US, a ballpark figure per athlete, right? To get to get a medal, and there's 117 with India. So I think they need to at least double the funding for the next Olympics if they're serious about winning medals.
I'm glad you bring that up, Monty, because the numbers, first of all, and then the coach-athlete relationship as well. Because Manas and I were talking about this earlier when we saw Prakash Padukone's interview. Now, Prakash Padukone is the badminton coach for this Indian contingent, specifically Lakshya Sen, right? He came out in a very explosive interview and practically just threw Lakshya under the bus. It was like, they can't be complaining about funding or support from the government and the federation. The athletes have to take responsibility. And we get that. We get that, okay, we've had enough of close finishes or fourth place finishes. We need to really, really get the results with the medals and things like that. But was this really the time to say something like that to an athlete? It's a debutant, 22-year-old, who's already, even though he didn't win a medal, it's the best ever finish by an Indian male badminton player at the Olympics ever, a semi-final finish. And it's just after he was like you mentioned, right? He was devastated. He couldn't speak in his interview. And then he must have gone back and heard his coach say these things to the media. That's not really great, right?
Yeah, and I think this is the area where I say, you've got to protect Indian athletes, their welfare as well. It can't be just, there is that sense of if they become winners, they're like godlike status back home in India. But if things just don't go quite well, suddenly they don't want the athlete to actually, have an opinion. It's more like, no, we've given you the funding. It's actually, you are responsible at the stage to perform. But relatively speaking, that again shows the lack of emotional intelligence from the coach. And that comes down to funding. The better the coach is, the more they will be the more money they will demand, but they will have better understanding of how to deal with these things. So a better coach would have said, would have not probably mentioned about funding, probably, mentioned a bit more about the game and protected the welfare of the athlete. So again, it actually adds more weight to the argument. So many fourth places, funding must be increased compared to the other nations per athlete. And India must do that, because if they want to compete in the 2036 or get the Olympics there, which we know, well, the cost in Paris is only 8 billion, and they've done really well compared to Rio and Tokyo and London, which was 17 billion. We got 24 billion. So they've done really well. Again, India could learn a lot from Paris, how to make it a cost-effective Olympics if they look to do it in 2036.
Monty, this point you raised about the amount of money that needs to be invested per medal is genuinely fascinating, and I'm definitely going to check more about that. But before we move on to the positives, there's another positive that we're going to talk about in just a bit. I just want to ask one more question about the disappointments that have happened and these fourth place finishes. After your debut, you lost your place in the English team as well, but then you came back and you were back in the test squad for the England team. In that period, what were the adjustments you believe you made? What do you think are in relation to the adjustments that probably Lakshya Sen would probably have to make at the age of 22? What are these little tweaks and changes do you think that are necessary for them to come back to the top, probably get a medal in the next Olympics?
Yeah, look. I think the key is, I'm very lucky we had the county cricket system in place, so we're playing 12 to 16 games per season. We have clear, defined goals. I have a system to fall back to where my game is continually being tested under pressure. So I'm going to be playing against opponents where I'll be, playing against some of the test players who play county cricket. I'll go on pitches. I'll be turning pitches. Am I able to now win a game of cricket? So I think the structure in England, if you have a slow little dip, you can quickly come back up. But I think in India do they get enough competition? That's the thing, So I know I want to touch upon the boxing athlete, the female, Lavlina. She obviously lost the final in the Asian Games to the same opponent that she lost this time round. So you kind of ask yourself the question, do they get enough, high level competition? And that's going to be the key for Zen as well. He will need to now have a 4-year plan where he says, right, where do I get my competitive games? Who do I play against? Bigger opponents? How do I get better? Do I need to maybe find a second home and try and get myself out of India, and I can focus on my game even better? Because a lot of athletes do that. It's very common in England. A lot of tennis players go to America to get better, and then they come back. With the racket sport. So it's an option, but I just think that, it's also part of your mental resilience. So they'll become more resilient in 4 years' time. They'll know how to deal with the competition better. It's their first time round, and often India just, like you said, they want to win gold. They don't think about silver or bronze. They want to be the number one, and that's all that matters. It's a very ambitious, driven sort of mindset, which I can understand. It comes from, aggressive form of thinking, positive thinking that Indian culture has over the last 10 years have kind of developed. So sometimes that thinking is good, but other times it can be detrimental if you don't even get on the podium. And like we see with Zen, he was devastated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really tough, right? Especially Manas and I can't even begin to think of what an athlete goes through in these multiple highs and lows, ups and downs in their careers. But yeah, while there were these 4th-place finishes, so many of them, right? These heartbreaks that we saw. And, we rightly spoke about earlier as well, that it is that mental aspect of the game, right? At the end of the day, they are not podium finishes. So yeah, I'm pretty sure all of these athletes will go back to the drawing board and just kind of figure out where, it's in the previous episode, we spoke about those 1%ers that matter so much. So where are those 1%ers going to come for them come LA 2028? So we'll see how that goes. But there have been such positives as well for this Indian team. We spoke about the biggest one, Manu Bhaker, right off the bat in this episode. But then Sarabjot Singh, that's a guy who overcame a disappointment within a couple of days' time, because on day one, in his individual event, he finished, he couldn't qualify by the barest of margins for the final. And he kept that aside, and he came back and then won the bronze medal with Manu Bhaker in the team event. It was that. And then another shooting medal from Swapnil Kusare, who, won another bronze when you least expected it out of him. And again, these are all really young athletes. You look at both Manu and Sarabjot, both 22-year-olds. Neeraj Chopra still very young. Lakshya Sen, who we spoke about, again, 22, still has multiple Olympic games, touchwood, given, hopefully his health and his body and his fitness are good enough. So that's still a sign of progress, isn't it, Monty? That it's all of these youngsters who are stepping up and really taking charge. And what that does is it bodes well for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Like they've got to also look at some of the other stories from, like we saw with the GB athletes. There was the guy who was doing the canoeing. He got silver medal, but he missed the Olympics in Tokyo. But this time around he came back again. So it's, you got to look at the resilience from other athletes from other countries who do well, who miss, who may be able to get, who are favourite to get a medal, but weren't able to do it, and kind of think to yourself, how do they deal with it, and what do I need to do for the next Olympics? It's they should feel proud of themselves that at least so many athletes came forth, and that probably didn't happen in the last Olympics. So many medals were close. So many athletes were very close to get a medal, but just couldn't get over the line. And that's where an area they have to, work upon. But then we look at, the other side was with Satwik and Chirag, that their coach has announced that he's, going to take a break. He's had enough. These are intense moments as well. So here's a sign where it's gone the other way, where a coach couldn't get him over the line. He's kind of like said, well, I want to take a break, and I'm sure that will be an area where, you know, the Indian, you know, board for athletes will look into and think, right, how do we now get these athletes to become better in 4 years' time? And like I said earlier, I think the funding needs to be, instead of 500 crores, it needs to be 1,000, in my opinion. More funding needs to be in place, because I think when you compare it with the other nations, that's how much they are paying, you know, for a medal. And I'm sure India would want to do that, especially if they want to ever have Olympics in India.
Monty, we want to just wrap this with one more topic, and that is Indian hockey. It has been incredibly positive. We beat Australia for the first time in the Olympics in hockey in 52 years. And unfortunately, we had to let Great Britain also exit in the last game that we played. But this could possibly be the biggest story in the Olympics, Indian hockey. We are 1 win away from a medal, 2 wins away from gold. What do you reckon, Monty? If you had to make a prediction right now, do you think India's making it?
I hope so, because there's a lot of disappointed fans. They've had a disappointing week so far. So let's hope the hockey cheers up India. And you know, even if they're going to go a step further, win gold, I think that would be like that game-changing moment. I think if the men's can win gold, suddenly it just adds that weight, adds that argument of saying, guys, look, we want more gold medals. There'll be that story of extra funding. We need to increase the funding. Will actually have a bigger weight. So for all the 117 athletes that are competing right now, I really hope India hockey win gold. So then it actually creates more of a narrative to say, well, we need to increase funding for the other athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what better sport to kind of get you that big uplifting moment than hockey, right? The most successful nation in the history of hockey at the Olympics. 8 gold medals, now going for their 9th. If India win tomorrow, they're playing Germany, and you know, if they win the semifinal against Germany, then it's already a silver medal confirmed, at least. But they don't want to stop there, because you know, Harmanpreet Singh, our captain, said that we've come to Paris to bring a 9th gold medal in hockey. He's not talking about a silver. He's not talking about a bronze. Of course, an Olympic medal he's going to be happy with. Everyone's going to be happy with. But they want gold medal because that's the standard that hockey has set. The last time in Tokyo, we spoke about this before as well, was the first time in 40 years that we won an Olympic medal in hockey after the gold in Munich 1980. But now again, they are like, okay, it's like time to wake up. We are the powerhouse in hockey historically, and it's time to get there. If that gold medal does happen, you already mentioned, you know, that it's going to just lift the other sports as well. It should lift the other sports as well. But I mean, just how big will it be for the rest of the campaign as well? Of course, there are only a few days left, but we still have Neeraj Chopra to go. We still have Mirabai Chanu to go. We have a couple of other athletes. Avinash Sable today has made the final of the 3,000-meter steeplechase. So there are quite a few athletes still in contention. If India win tomorrow, first of all, and secure at least a silver medal and then the gold medal later, how uplifting is it going to be for the rest of this campaign?
But I think it will uplift all the other athletes as well, because I think they'll think, look, the hockey have done it, we can do it as well. And you know, I think Indian athletes love a motivational story to uplift them, and they need something like that right now, you know. And I think hopefully the hockey will do it. I'll support in GB, and I was, you know, during the penalties, the shootout, I was optimistic, but the skill level of the Indian hockey team was something else. The way they did the shootout. So yeah, I wish them all the best, and I hope they get that gold so you can lift the other athletes, and then India may get able to get a few more medals.
Well, do you also think that was a red card to Amit Rohidas? I'm biased. I'm not going to say it was a red card.
Absolutely, it was a red card in my opinion. I thought it was a red card. GB had everything going in their favour. The defence was again impeccable from India, but also they got a very good foreign coach in Rogers. So you can see that looking on the outside sometimes can help as well. But overall, can see why India was strong. They were a player down, the defence was strong, but then in the shootout, that skill, it was something else. It was you just know Indian hockey is a very skillful, very highly skilled team.
Right. Monty, actually, before we let you go, I'm already taking a bit more of your time, but I'm just thinking a lot about the fact that you mentioned the amount of funding required per medal. If you had to get a little more into the detail of that, which aspects, which departments do you think funding could be pushed into to improve the Indian game, to improve the performance?
Yeah, I think badminton is an area of strength for India. That definitely needs to be. Shooting is again in when you want a gold medal next time around, right?
Mhm.
So maybe that's an area where you invest more. Boxing, I would do that because you obviously got the the female boxer there as well, and then some of the other ones, lesser ones as well. We got, like you talked about on the track and field. I think it's only 10 crores that they've invested. I think they could invest more in that as well. Maybe double or triple that. Look, in my opinion, more visibility is created for Indian athletes. I think the 1 billion population will shout even louder.
That's the plan. That's the plan. Monty, once again, it has been so awesome having you with us. Ayush, do you have any questions?
No, it's just I just leave it on the note that no
Leave it
questions,
on
but
this.
just want to leave it on the note that that's been disappointment. We spoke most of this episode as well. We spoke about the disappointing factors where we could improve. It's again been that kind of an Olympic year for India, but there's still 6-7-ish days to go for the Olympics. We can still at least match our Tokyo medal tally, if not go further. And our biggest superstars yet left to come to the arena in Neeraj, who starts pretty soon. So yeah, there's still hope. And definitely, while there's hope, if we end this campaign on a high, let it not be something that we can rest on and just keep moving forward.
All I want to say is do your duty, do your best, rest will follow.
In the wise words of the Bhagavad Gita and Manu Bhaker as well now, that's the perfect way to leave this. Thank you so much, Monty and Manas. And we'll join you guys again soon with the Olympics going on as well. We'll come up with another episode really soon. In the meantime, enjoy the Olympics. Take care and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.